very, very early on the Wednesday morning between the death and the funeral. And I just sat down and wrote it. And it took about an hour and a half and just came pouring out, really. Actually, it's interesting. Sounds rather sort of bizarre, but I did go to Diana's coffin the day after I'd written it, and I read it to her in there. And I did sort of feel a sort of positive energy come through that somehow she approved of what I was going to say.
The night before the most watched funeral of the 20th century, Charles Spencer walked alone to his sister's coffin, unfolded the eulogy he had finished writing only hours earlier, and read it aloud to her. Not to an audience, not to a camera, to Diana. He has admitted this himself, that he went to her the day after he wrote it and read her every word. Hold that image in your mind, a brother rehearsing the most dangerous speech in modern royal history to the one person who would never hear it. Because nearly 3 decades later, that same man looked down at a glossy documentary proposal carrying the names Netflix, Prince Harry, and Meghan Markle, and answered it with 4 words. Is this a joke? 4 words. That is all it took to detonate the Sussex media machine, and tonight I am going to show you exactly why those 4 words may prove more devastating to Harry and Meghan than anything King Charles or Prince William has ever done. Here is my promise to you, and you know I keep my promises. By the end of this video, you will have 3 answers. First, what was actually inside that pitch? The specific requests that made Diana's brother recoil. Because once you hear what they asked for, the diaries, the home movies, the house itself, you will understand his fury. Second, the secret that explains everything about this man, a private guilt Charles Spencer has reportedly carried since the 1990s, the wound that turned him into the most uncompromising gatekeeper in Britain, and the reason this particular proposal felt to him like history trying to repeat itself. And third, the quiet letter he is said to have written afterward, not to Harry, not to Meghan, but to Prince William, a letter that royal insiders describe as strategy, not sentiment, and that may redraw the battle lines of this entire family war. 3 loops. I will close every one of them before we finish, in that order. That is the deal between you and me. But none of this makes a shred of sense until you understand who Charles Spencer actually is, because the man has stayed in the background so long that most of the public has genuinely forgotten the scale of him. Charles Spencer is 62 years old, the youngest brother of the late Diana, Princess of Wales, and the 9th Earl Spencer, head of a family that has held its land and its name for 5 centuries. And if you remember him at all, you remember him for one afternoon in September of 1997, standing in Westminster Abbey in front of a global audience of roughly 2 billion people, delivering a eulogy that did something no one had ever dared to do at a royal occasion. He challenged the royal family to their faces, with the king's mother and the future kings sitting feet away. He promised, on behalf of what he called Diana's blood family, that her sons would be raised with warmth and with imagination, not smothered by cold royal rigidity. He promised to shield William and Harry from the torment that had hounded his sister to her final hours in that Paris tunnel. People remember the applause that rolled into the Abbey from the streets like weather. What they forget is that the speech was not really a eulogy at all. It was a vow. And Charles Spencer has spent every year since keeping it very quietly and very deliberately. Start with the burial itself, because this is the first move on the board and almost nobody reads it correctly. The world assumed Diana would be laid to rest among royalty, in a royal vault, on royal terms, with the palace deciding the where and the how. Nothing could be further from what happened. Diana was buried at Althorp, the Spencer estate in Northamptonshire, the house where she grew up, where she rode her horses, where she became the woman the world fell in love with, on ground her family has owned for 500 years. Strip away the softness and say it plainly. Her brother refused to let the institution have her, even in death. The royal family got the funeral. The Spencers kept Diana. From that day forward, anyone who wanted the private Diana, the real one, the letters and the film reels and the childhood rooms, had to come through one man And that man had already told 2 billion people exactly what he thought of the institution asking. So that is the gatekeeper. And before we go on, try this thought experiment because it will sharpen everything that follows. Think of Diana's legacy as a great museum. The world owns the postcards, the gowns, the headlines, the famous photographs, the endlessly replayed clips. Anyone can print those, and heaven knows everyone has. But the originals, the handwritten pages, the unedited family film, the room she actually lived in, the ground she actually rests in, all of that sits in a single private collection with a single curator who decides what is loaned out and what stays in the dark. Every Diana documentary you have ever seen was built from postcards. The curator has never once loaned the originals. Now ask yourself, what would it take for him to open that collection for the very first time? What level of trust? What purity of purpose? What guarantee that his sister's memory would be honored rather than spent? Hold your answer. Then watch who came to ask and what they were asking for, and decide for yourself whether they ever stood a chance. Now watch what came walking up the drive. It began, as these things always do, with something small and shiny and apparently innocent: the jewelry. At the evening reception of the royal wedding in 2018, Meghan Markle arrived wearing Diana's aquamarine ring, that great pale blue stone the world instantly recognized. And honestly, in that first moment, it probably felt rather lovely from where Charles Spencer stood. Someone new, someone his nephew adored, choosing to carry a piece of Diana into her wedding night. It felt like remembrance. Perhaps it even felt like family. Then came the butterfly earrings, then the Cartier tank watch, then the gold bracelets. Piece by piece, appearance by appearance, each item that had belonged to Diana surfaced on Meghan at precisely the events where photography was not merely likely but guaranteed. And let me be fair, because fairness matters on this channel. No one can prove the intentions were anything but genuine, and grief does strange and tender things inside families. But patterns are patterns, and the public spotted this one quickly. Somehow, every major Meghan moment arrived with a Diana piece attached, like a hallmark stamped into the metal of the occasion. Once as a tribute, twice as a habit. Every single time is a strategy, and you do not need a palace source to see it. You only need eyes. Keep that word, strategy, in your pocket, because the jewelry was only the overture, and what came next is where a brother's warm feeling reportedly began to curdle into something much colder. March 2021. The Oprah interview. You remember it, the whole planet remembers it, but I want you to remember it the way Charles Spencer reportedly watched it alone from Althorp. Critics took that broadcast apart frame by frame afterward, and what they found was not an accident of staging. The lighting, low and golden. The setting, soft, intimate, confessional. The theme: a young woman silenced by an institution that did not care about her mental health, her cries for help dismissed, isolated inside a hostile system, with no door left open except the door to the public. Any royal watcher worth their salt felt the chill of recognition immediately, because that is almost beam for beam. The architecture of Diana's 1995 Panorama interview, the broadcast Diana gave because the palace had shut every other door on her. The camera angles rhymed. The grammar of victimhood rhymed. The casting rhymed. One woman, one sympathetic interviewer, one faceless institution. Watching from the house where his sister grew up, Charles Spencer reportedly did not experience that hour as a tribute. And honestly, knowing what you are about to learn in a few minutes about his history with Panorama, how could he? Run the rhyme test yourself, side by side, element by element. 1995, a royal wife, isolated, speaking of an institution deaf to her suffering. 2021, a royal wife, isolated, speaking of an institution deaf to her suffering. 1995, the palace has closed every door, so she goes over its head straight to the public through one trusted interviewer. 2021, identical. 1995, hushed lighting, a confessional stillness, the sense of secrets finally escaping. 2021. Identical. The one element that changed is the most telling of all. Diana gave her interview while trapped inside the system, with everything to lose and no exit in sight. The 2021 version was filmed from a villa in California after the exit, with a production apparatus attached. The original was a cry for help. The remake, whatever else you believe about it, was a launch. Then came the Netflix productions, the documentary series, the confessional pieces to camera, and with them a story built for export, a couple forced to flee, hunted across continents by the very same establishment and the very same press pack that destroyed Diana. The implication was never subtle. It said what happened to her is happening again. The same machine, a new generation, and this time the heroine escaped. As a piece of storytelling, I will grant you, it is compelling. As a business model, it is brilliant. But for the man who watched his sister's real anguish get harvested in real time by media people who never cared whether she survived it, this began to look horribly familiar. The earrings had felt like remembrance. This felt like repetition. And somewhere in those years, I suspect, the warm feeling died entirely. Let me give you my frame for what was really happening, because I come at this from an angle most royal commentary never touches. Think of it as brand licensing. Strip out the emotion and look at the assets. After Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duty and gave up the use of their HRH styles, they had to live on something, and what they had was fame with an expiry date and one asset more bankable than every other combined: Diana. Her face, her myth, her martyrdom. In business terms, the Sussexes had been trading on a brand they used without a license, because the actual licensor, the keeper of the archive, the controller of the estate, the owner of the originals, was a 62-year-old man in Northamptonshire, whom nobody had bothered to consult. Every ring worn, every panorama echo, every hunted like Diana framing was another unauthorized withdrawal from the Diana account. And here is the thing about unauthorized withdrawals. They work beautifully right up until the day you need the bank manager to approve a loan. Remember that. We are getting there, because in early 2026, the Sussex operation hit the wall. The Spotify arrangement had already collapsed. The lifestyle venture launched as American Riviera Orchard was not getting the traction they expected. The whole California project needed something enormous, something that would justify the Netflix relationship and remind the world loudly why Harry and Meghan still mattered. And then, somewhere in a development meeting, someone produced the idea. A grand anniversary documentary for 2027. Diana, 30 years after the Paris tunnel. 30 years of grief. 30 years of unanswered questions. An emotional, cinematic, definitive Diana film, fronted by her own son. On paper, it made perfect sense, and Netflix reportedly loved it instantly and stood ready to pour resources into it. But there was one angle that made the pitch truly irresistible to the people selling it, and this is the angle you need to sit with. They reportedly wanted to draw a straight, explicit line between Diana's war with the establishment and Meghan's war with the same forces. They wanted to position Meghan Markle as the modern continuation of Diana's story, the 21st century version of the woman who refused to be silenced. Diana's halo formally transferred. Bold? Certainly. Ambitious? Wildly. And it carried one catastrophic, structural, unfixable problem. They needed Charles Spencer to make it work. Because here is what the project reportedly required, and listen closely, because this list is the answer to the first loop I opened at the top of this video. They wanted Althorp itself as the backdrop, the childhood home, the lake, the island where she rests. They wanted the private family archives. They reportedly wanted access to Diana's personal handwritten diaries. They wanted home movies that have never been seen publicly, the unguarded footage, the real private Diana that no one outside the Spencer family has ever touched. Without those things, this would be just another history documentary assembled from the same recycled news clips as every other one. With them, it would be the definitive Diana film of the century, and there is exactly one living person who controls every item on that list. So Netflix and the Sussex team took the proposal to Charles Spencer, and by every indication, they genuinely believed he would say yes on the spot. And you can see their logic. From the outside, it looks like a colossal cinematic tribute, a love letter with a streaming budget, exactly the sort of thing a devoted brother who guards his sister's memory ought to want. But that is not what Charles Spencer saw when he read it. He saw the role Meghan was scripted to play. He saw where the halo was being moved to, and the moment he understood the architecture of the thing, who it truly served and what it truly sold, he gave the response that has now passed into royal legend. Is this a joke? When this particular man calls your project a joke, the word carries the weight of 3 decades. Few people alive hold more moral authority over Diana's legacy than the brother who has defended it since the day they carried her to the island. And just like that, the people who had built an entire documentary around Diana's legacy discovered they had no Diana to build it around. No house, no diaries, no film reels, no license. Now for the second loop, the one I have been holding back, because this is the part of the story that transforms Charles Spencer from a stubborn aristocrat into something far more human and far more immovable. Why is this man so absolute? Why does the archive stay sealed against every offer, every budget, every nephew? The answer, according to long-standing accounts, is guilt. A very specific guilt that has reportedly shaped everything he has done since 1997. The story goes like this. It was reportedly Charles Spencer himself who first brought his sister into contact with the journalist behind the Panorama interview, Martin Bashir. The same interview the world now knows was obtained through forged documents and calculated psychological manipulation. Picture the mechanics of it. Diana in the mid-1990s was isolated, frightened, and in real pain, and someone arrived with fabricated paperwork designed to convince her that the people around her were betraying her, that she could trust no one, that her only safe move was to sit down in front of a camera and bleed for the nation. Her vulnerability was not incidental to that broadcast. Her vulnerability was the product. And her younger brother, by these accounts, had unwittingly held the door open. When the full truth about how that interview was engineered finally surfaced years later, it reportedly hit Charles Spencer like a landslide, because it meant he had played a part, however innocent, however unintended, in one of the most profound exploitations of his sister's suffering during her lifetime. Think about what that does to a person. You spend your life believing you are your sister's protector, and then you learn that the single most damaging media event of her life walked in through an introduction you made. Every year since, by every account, has been an act of atonement. The sealed diaries, the unseen home movies, the refusals, decade after decade, to let anyone monetize the island or the archive. He has been making sure, with the single-mindedness of a man doing penance, that nothing like Panorama can ever happen to Diana again, even in death. And in doing so, he has achieved something quietly extraordinary, something almost no famous figure of the modern age has been granted. He has protected Diana's mystery. There is a private Diana the world has never consumed, and she exists only because one man keeps saying no. So now, run the tape again, and this time, put yourself in the chair. You are Charles Spencer. You have spent almost 30 years atoning for one introduction. You have turned down every network, every publisher, every offer because you watched what happened the one time the gate was left open. And now a courier delivers a proposal that wants the diaries your sister wrote in her own hand, the home movies of her as a girl on the lawns of Althorp, the island where you buried her, all of it, to serve a story that ends not with Diana, but with Meghan Markle wearing her halo. You know, the financial pressure behind the pitch. You know, the debut documentary about royal wounds was the platform's biggest ever opening, and you can therefore calculate to the decimal point what your sister's private pain is worth to these people. What do you say? Honestly, what would any brother say? A proposal lands on his desk. Soft lighting and confessional framing. The Panorama playbook reborn at Oprah's villa. A narrative that mines his sister's pain to crown a successor. A request for the diaries, the home movies, the most intimate remains of the most exploited woman of her era, to feed a streaming platform's content pipeline at a moment when, as we are about to see, the people pitching it were financially desperate. Of course he said what he said. Honestly, the only surprise is that he kept it to 4 words. Now, the desperation, because to understand why this documentary mattered so much to Montecito, you have to look at the state of the Sussex media empire in early 2026, and I will warn you now, it is not a pretty picture. Everyone knows about the $100 million Netflix deal, the 5-year arrangement that bankrolled the California dream, and everyone now knows it has been hanging by a thread. The flagship meant to steady the ship was the lifestyle series With Love, Meghan. Instead, it became the iceberg. Within 24 hours of the show going live on Netflix, the verdicts came in thick, fast, and brutal. Let me read you the scoreboard, because the scoreboard is the story. The Evening Standard in London awarded it 4 stars and still could not resist mocking it on the way out the door. The Times gave it 2 stars and described it, in a phrase I genuinely treasure, as surreally dull. The Daily Telegraph also landed on 2 stars and called the program an exercise in narcissism filled with extravagant brunches, celebrity pals, and business plugs. And then there is The Guardian, and pay attention to this one, because The Guardian is no royalist rag. This is a paper that has long favored abolishing the monarchy altogether and has repeatedly published pieces condemning the treatment of Meghan. If anyone in British print was primed to love this show, it was them. They gave it 1 star and called it toe-curlingly unlovable TV. One of their writers went further and suggested it might be the final thing Meghan ever makes for Netflix. Even the television editor at Hello, the gentlest publication in the kingdom, confessed she simply could not work out who the program was for. When the spectrum of British media runs from Republican broadsheet to Royal Fan Weekly and they all converge on the same wince, that is not a review problem, that is a product problem. And here is the part of the review story most coverage skated past, the detail I find genuinely fascinating. The harshest verdict did not come from the so-called royalist press at all. It came from The Guardian, the paper most ideologically sympathetic to Meghan's grievances against the institution, the paper that wants the whole monarchy abolished. Think about what that means. Her natural allies, the people predisposed to cheer anything that diminishes the crown, sat through her show and reached for 1 star. When your enemies pan you, that is Tuesday. When your friends pan you, that is a verdict. And the pattern behind it is worse than any single review. The couple's debut documentary series, Harry and Meghan, the one where they unpacked their struggles with royal life, remains the most watched debut in the platform's history. And that fact is the skeleton key to this entire saga. So hold on to it. Their other projects, Heart of Invictus and Polo, met a frosty critical response. With Love, Meghan, pitched as a fresh, approachable window into their California life, resonated even less. Sit those facts side by side, and the message from the audience could not be louder if they chartered a plane to write it in the sky. The world is not interested in Meghan's brunches. The world is interested in royal wounds. The only Sussex product that has ever truly sold is proximity to the crown and to Diana. Which is precisely why, when the brunch economy collapsed, the pitch deck reached for the deepest royal wound there is. According to Fox News, industry experts noted the 5-year, $100 million arrangement was due to expire in 2025. A second season of With Love, Meghan has already been filmed and is scheduled to premiere this autumn, but beyond that, the fog rolls in. Following the lukewarm reception, the streaming giant has reportedly decided against renewing the deal, much to Meghan's chagrin, although other reports insist she remains in talks for some form of renewal. So let us be precise and say the marriage between Montecito and Netflix is, at minimum, on life support. The royal commentator Ian Pelham Turner put it plainly, losing Netflix would be a major blow for the couple. And according to media watchers, she desperately needs to get back on her feet or surrender the only realistic hope she has of remaining in the spotlight. Picture the situation from inside that Montecito office for a moment, because the stakes here are brutally simple. A second season, already shot, already paid for, sails toward an autumn premiere while the deal that commissioned it lies expiring on the table. Every review of season 1 becomes evidence in the renewal file. Every cultural shrug gets counted. If season 2 lands the way season 1 did, there is no season 3, no pipeline, no platform, and the entire California project loses the engine that funds it. That is the cliff edge on which the Diana documentary pitch was standing. It was never one project among many. It was the project, the one card in the deck guaranteed to draw a global audience, because it was the one card printed with the only royal story bigger than their own exit. And the man at Althorp tore it up with 4 words. Take all of that together, and the 2027 Diana documentary stops looking like a passion project and starts looking like exactly what I believe it was, a rescue flare. The question now is whether the Sussexes can find a way around the rejection, and that question leads us somewhere genuinely unexpected. Because here is the third loop, the letter, and this is where the story stops being about a documentary and becomes about the future of the monarchy itself. Charles Spencer, by all accounts, did not make this decision in a vacuum, and sources close to the palace have been quietly describing a relationship that most royal watchers have been sleeping on completely. The understanding between Diana's brother and Diana's eldest son. It is no secret that Prince William has been privately furious for years about the commercialization of his mother's image. But understand William's cage. He is the future king, which means every action he takes detonates consequences. He cannot publicly block his own brother's media projects without manufacturing a global headline about palace censorship and royal family warfare. And when the palace blocks something, it always reads as the establishment protecting itself. But when Diana's own brother, the man who stood in Westminster Abbey and vowed before 2 billion people to protect her sons, calls a project a joke, that is not institutional control. That is family honor. Nobody can spin it, because there is no institution to blame. Do you see the elegance of it? The one man free to say no is the one man whose no cannot be weaponized. William never had to lift a finger, and I would gently suggest to you that this is not a coincidence so much as an alignment. 2 guardians of the same memory arriving at the same wall from different directions. There is a name for this in international affairs, and the parallel is worth 30 seconds of your time. When 2 governments cannot speak without losing face, the message travels through a back channel, a private citizen, an elder statesman, someone with standing on both sides and a uniform on neither. The envoy can say the unsayable precisely because he holds no office, and if the message lands badly, no government falls. That is exactly the role Charles Spencer now occupies in this family war. He has standing with the public, blood ties to both princes, moral title to Diana's memory, and no constitutional position whatsoever. The palace cannot tell Netflix no without a scandal. William cannot tell Harry no without a headline. But the Earl in Northamptonshire can tell everyone no in 4 words. Over breakfast, and the only institution that takes the hit is Montecito. Once you see him as the back channel, the next development stops being surprising and starts being inevitable. And then, reportedly, came the move nobody saw coming. In a discreet but remarkable step, Charles Spencer is said to have written to Prince William, urging him to publicly address the deepening crisis between Prince Harry and the royal family. And before anyone mistakes this for peacemaking, let me kill that idea now. According to insiders, this plea is not about emotional reconciliation. It is about strategy, stability, and protecting the global standing of the British monarchy. The reported contents are brutal in their clarity. The silence cannot continue. The crown must reclaim its strength. Harry, in the eyes of the world's media, has become a symbol of weakness, no longer seen as the man he was raised to be, the soldier, the prince, the statesman, but as a shadow of himself, emotionally fragile, reactive, and consumed by the story of his wife. Spencer reportedly warned that Harry's choices have allowed the press to redefine him, not as a royal, but as an outsider, led rather than leading, and that in the eyes of many royalists and many global outlets, that perception has hardened into something permanent. Most striking of all, he is said to have cautioned that by ignoring Harry completely, treating him with total indifference, the royal family is handing Harry and Meghan an open microphone, letting them dominate the global story unchecked while traditional royal values are mocked and dismantled in real time. Read that again. Diana's brother, the man who once stood up at her funeral and challenged the Windsors to their faces, is now reportedly urging the future king to defend the crown's image. If you ever wanted a single sentence to measure how completely Harry and Meghan have rearranged the loyalties of this family, there it is. So whose side is the public on? Because a fight like this never stays inside the family, and right now there is a genuine global debate raging across social media, television panels, and international front pages. And it has divided opinion in a way that is anything but equal. On one side stand those who back Prince William and, by extension, Charles Spencer. For them, refusing the Netflix documentary is a matter of respect and plain honor. Diana's story, they argue, has been told and retold, and converting her memory into yet another entertainment product risks trivializing the emotional weight of her death. The 30th anniversary on this view should be a moment of reflection within her family, not a marketing window with a premiere date. On the other side, gather Harry's defenders, and in fairness, their argument deserves a proper hearing too. Diana shaped both of her sons equally, they say, and Harry has every right to tell the story of his own mother. His perspective on grief, on media intrusion, on growing up inside that hurricane offers a dimension of the historical record that nobody else alive can supply. And the sober truth, as ever, sits somewhere messier than either camp admits. Projects like this are assembled by small armies of producers, historians, writers, and executives. And decisions about streaming content are rarely the whim of one individual. But before you pick your camp, try standing in both pairs of shoes. Imagine you are William, and the most painful event of your childhood is being scheduled as a content drop with a marketing plan by your own brother's production partners. Now imagine you are Harry and you are told that the story of your own mother, the woman whose hand you held through hospital wards and homeless shelters, is somehow not yours to tell. Both of those positions hurt. Both are human. That is what makes this saga so unbearable to watch. There is no villain in that particular frame, only two sons and one grave. The villainy, if you want to find it, lives in the commercial machinery wrapped around the grief, and in the world of celebrity and royalty, perception weighs as much as fact, where every leak and rumor instantly becomes another chapter in the saga of two warring brothers. And here is why the temperature runs so hot, why this is not just another content dispute. Remember who we are actually talking about. Long before her sons became headlines, Diana had made herself one of the most consequential figures the modern monarchy has ever produced, not through palaces, but through defiance. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, when fear and misinformation around HIV and AIDS were everywhere, when patients were stigmatized, abandoned, and treated as outcasts, Diana walked into the wards and took their hands. She visited the hospitals, the orphanages, the care facilities. She worked tirelessly with organizations like the National AIDS Trust and the London Lighthouse, dragging global attention to people the world preferred to forget. And most tellingly for our story, she took William and Harry with her to homeless shelters, to the hard edges of life beyond the palace gates, because she wanted her boys to grow into men who would spend their privilege on other people. That is the inheritance both brothers claim. That is the account everyone keeps trying to draw from. And that is why every documentary, book, and interview that touches her name sets off a national argument, because for millions of people, Diana is not content, she is conscience. Which brings us, finally, to Harry, and to the state of the family he left. Their exit from royal duty was followed by the memoir Spare, the protocol-shattering book that became the fastest-selling nonfiction title of all time upon its release in January of 2023. A book in which Harry left no stone unturned, pouring out his contentious relationships with his father and his brother, and the conflagration his marriage brought into royal life, before he shut the door on it altogether. The Sussexes have returned to the United Kingdom only a handful of times since. And now, according to a new report, the royal family is open to peace talks with Prince Harry, but remains extremely reluctant to reconcile with Meghan Markle. Just weeks after Harry sent his aides to London to meet with King Charles's communications secretary, it emerged that the core of the rift has not moved an inch. And according to insiders, it comes down to one word: trust. There is none. On Meghan's 44th birthday, of all days, a source spelled it out in the clearest terms yet. The royal family simply does not trust her. The monarch may be open to resolution with his son, but not by these accounts with his daughter-in-law. The same reporting suggests the future may see Harry traveling to and from the United Kingdom alone, without Meghan and without Archie and Lilibet, because the family's greatest fear, and I want you to let this sink all the way in, is that any private conversation they have with her becomes raw material for the next money-making venture she throws herself into. They are not afraid of her anger. They are afraid of her content calendar. Meanwhile, King Charles has maintained a stoic silence across the 5,459 miles separating him from his youngest son, even as Harry, to his credit, has reportedly offered to share his diary dates with the family. Full transparency, an offer extended even to William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, who have not spoken to the Sussexes in years. So let us close the loops, in order, exactly as promised. But first, the ledger. Because when you line up the withdrawals from the Diana account in a single column, the pattern becomes impossible to unsee. 2018, the aquamarine ring at the wedding reception, the first borrowing, received warmly. Then the butterfly earrings, the Cartier tank watch, the gold bracelets, each one timed to a guaranteed photograph. 2021. The Oprah interview, the panorama architecture rebuilt to the rafters, lighting, framing, victim, and institution. Then the Netflix documentary series, the hunted couple fleeing the machine that destroyed Diana, her tragedy converted into their origin story. And finally, 2026. The request for the vault itself, the diaries, the home movies, Althorp as a film set, and the halo formally fitted to a new head. Watch the escalation. They began by borrowing her jewelry and ended by asking for her soul. Each withdrawal was bigger than the last. Each one was made without consulting the man who keeps the account, and the final one bounced. Of course it bounced. Loop 1. What was in the pitch? A 30th anniversary Diana documentary for 2027 that asked for Althorp, the private archives, the handwritten diaries, and the unseen home movies, built to crown Meghan Markle as the 21st century Diana, pitched at the precise moment the Spotify deal had died, American Riviera Orchard was stalling, and the $100 million Netflix arrangement was expiring. Loop 2. Why the gatekeeper said no. Because Charles Spencer reportedly carries the guilt of having introduced his sister to Martin Bashir, watched her vulnerability turned into television through forged documents, and swore that no one, not a journalist, not a network, not a nephew, would ever harvest Diana's pain again. Loop 3. The letter. Far from siding with Harry, Diana's brother reportedly wrote to Prince William urging the future king to break his silence and defend the crown, because in his eyes, Harry is no longer the threat. The unchecked story is... And so, the question I leave on your table is the one this whole saga has been asking from the start. Is it ever all right to spend Diana's legacy as currency, even by her own son? Was Charles Spencer right to slam the vault shut? Tell me below, because I read everything, and I genuinely want to know where you land. But whatever you decide, carry this line out of here with you. Diana was exploited once by a man with forged documents, and her brother has decided she will not be exploited again by a man with a streaming deal. The vault at Althorp stays shut. The question is what a desperate Montecito does next, and whether Netflix walks away for good. The moment there is movement, you and I will be the first to talk about it. I am Violet Buzz. Until next time.